Hey there, Evan Nathaniel Grimm. Welcome to my October forecast. I'm going to be explaining what's coming for each and every zodiac sign in the month of October. That includes going through the key themes, the highlights, and then diving deep into what every sign's going to be experiencing. I'm going to share my screen today as per usual. We're going to walk through some of the highlights again of October and then apply it to each sign. And as I go through today, you want to track your sun, moon, and rising sign with preference for your rising sign. So I have timestamps down below. So I would invite you to watch these themes first. But of course, after that, track your rising sign first and then track your sun and moon through what's called the derivative chart. So that's why sun and moon forecasts are possible. But anyways, what's going on in October? Let's review some of the dominant transits. It's eclipse season. Welcome back. Welcome back to eclipse season. I'm sure you missed it. So we have eclipses, very commonly. So every, 6 months or so. And we last had an eclipse in the springtime, sort of in that May timeframe. And that was impacting Scorpios, Tauruses, and also Leos and Aquariuses to some extent. But now the tables have turned, the tides have shifted as we get the lunar nodes in Aries and Libra. The cardinal signs are heavily impacted by eclipses this time. But of course, the eclipses affect everybody because they do mark this sort of changing of the channel, this reset, and this pivot. Again, we have a solar eclipse in Libra on October 14th, and then we have a partial lunar eclipse in Taurus on October 28th. I'll be reviewing those. We also do have Mars square Pluto eventually, and Venus in Virgo opposite Saturn. So those are some of the key highlights. But other noteworthy changes, just for your reference, we do have Pluto stationing direct finally on October 10th. That will be a momentum shift towards sort of an acceleration of the final chapter of Pluto and Capricorn, which is all about the the expose on how power is wielded at the highest rungs of society. So it's really exposing the corruption. It's exposing the top heavy nature of bureaucracy. It's exposing the dysfunction within, again, really every industry, the deteriorating trust that the people have in institutions, but also the sort of out of touch nature of these institutions. How, again, our leadership, whether that's corporate, political, or even in, Hollywood, is increasingly disconnected from where the trends are going, how society is shifting. So that's going to feed in. That's a totally, that's just on the background. I'm not going to dwell on that for really too long in this forecast. But Pluto is going back into Aquarius next January 2024. So 2024 is really going to bring up those Pluto and Aquarius themes. But for now, we're still kind of rounding out our sort of collective realization that the systems are broken. Now, we also have Venus entering Virgo on October 8th. That's going to raise expectations in relationships, but also put the spotlight on work and I think the markets, the stock market, things like that. We also have Mars conjunct the South Node October 3rd and 4th. That's going to sort of mark a relinquishing or purging of energy and frustration. So people are kind of on the verge of being burned out, and especially in relationships. So a lot of people are thinking about resetting those contracts, those energetic contracts, those karmic contracts with another person or a friend or a company. Mars also will square Pluto October 7th through 11th. That's going to be, for a lot of people, an implosion, and also a reset, a total and absolute reset, saying that I am done with this person. I'm done with this company. I'm walking away. Then Mars enters Scorpio October 12th. So that will put even more energy towards transformation and rebirth. Then we have Mercury leaving its post-shadow phase by September 29th. So luckily, October, Mercury is done with the retrograde shadow period. Now, Venus leaves its post-shadow period October 7th. So at that point, relationships are very much moving forward. Then Mercury enters Libra October 4th. Mercury enters Scorpio October 21st. The sun, of course, enters Scorpio October 23rd, and we're still waiting on Saturn, Neptune, Jupiter, and Uranus to move direct. Of course, some of those planets will not station direct until much later in the year. But anyways, let's just level set here and explain like what's going on in October. Let's give context here. So August and September were pretty much defined by all the retrogrades. So we had a deluge of retrogrades, and we've been hit with waves of retrogrades in recent memory because of the position of the social and outer planets. So those outer planets are clustered around a band of zodiac signs. So when Venus or Mercury station direct or go direct, we succumb to really these bouts of exhaustion because we also have all these outer planets retrograde on top of it. So that's just what happens when Jupiter and Uranus and Saturn and Neptune and even Pluto to some extent are all like within the same range of the sky. So when the sun starts to form a trine with a lot of those signs, and then eventually in opposition with those planets all kind of retrograde in waves. So anyways, but with the direct motion finally of Mercury and Venus, our day-to-day lives, like our day-to-day, right? Like not necessarily like the long term, but just like the day-to-day stuff is swimming a little bit more smoothly now. But Mars is building up tension in our relationships now because it's in Libra and it will conjoin the South Node and square Pluto. So Mars in Libra is kind of begging us all to deal with problems in our relationships that we've previously avoided. So Mars is sort of telling us to raise expectations, demand more from partners. Again, whether that's a friend, a business, a company, a vendor, or a romantic partner. So dealing with the problems, addressing the elephant in the room. And, even if that risks rejection or breaking off the connection, Mars is the courage to confront in this case. And so many people are realizing along the way in addressing these things that there are people who are draining them of their energy. We can call them energy vampires. And this is the moment that we're building in right away in early October, because we just had an Aries full moon September 29th. But it's sort of, this is the moment to purge those connections, reset those energetic contracts. And as I was kind of coming up with the title for the month of October, I sort of landed on this idea of, are we renewing or nullifying energetic contracts? That's the key question this month. And also Mars will square Pluto just as Pluto is stationing direct around October 10th. And so Mars square Pluto, they're going to kind of grind against each other, setting the conditions for a total and absolute reset, especially for cardinal signs. But and really anyone with cardinal placements around 27 degrees. And by the way, the 27th degree is a Gemini degree. So we're speaking, vocalizing, talking about how we want to reset. And but then we have Venus in Virgo. And Venus is going to be ruling over both the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse because we're dealing with Libra and Taurus. So, as an astrologer, it's almost like too easy to analyze this because it's like, clearly Venus, we're talking about Venusian themes here with Libra and Taurus being the eclipses and being ruled by Venus. And where is Venus? Venus in Virgo is in its fall, and it's opposite a malefic, the greater malefic of Saturn. So, if you watch any October forecast from astrologers, like hopefully we're all on the same page as long as we've done our research, which is that this is a tough sort of scrutinization of relationships. And again, that's romantic, that's platonic, that's professional. It's not just about love. So if you're watching this video and you're like, I'm not in a relationship, I'm single, and I don't even have friends, this still applies to you because as long as you're working with somebody, you're in a contract and an agreement with somebody, even if it's a company, then you are absolutely affected by this. You absolutely are thinking about, again, do I really want to work with this person? Are we on the same page? Do we have the same values? Do we have the same goals? So anyways, Venus in Virgo is going to underscore the theme of putting more effort into relationships and then scrutinizing them. Because like Venus in Leo is somewhat a little bit more entitled and basking in this idea of affirmation. But Venus in Virgo cares about results like any earth sign. Relationships that are objectively not moving forward will fall away in October. But relationships that have true potential will be salvaged. I just want to quickly address also the strikes. So of course, as I've predicted in other YouTube videos, you can go back to my last monthly horoscope. I talked about how there'd be major changes in the Hollywood writer's strike situation late September through mid-October. And as I'm filming this, it looks like that's happening. It looks like there are changes coming very soon. And that's because Mars conjunct the South Node is like, sort of this fate taking over. It's fate really taking the wheel and driving these sudden sort of pivotal changes, especially with Mars and Libra. It's like people are motivated to get a deal done. And squaring Pluto, they want some kind of finality to this of like, all right, we're going to reset the table. And it's like either some kind of deal does get done, or if it doesn't happen by mid-October, I think, then honestly, I think we're going to have to wait until next year for any kind of resolution. Now, of course, we're seeing the auto workers striking as well. That's not surprising. That's part of the theme I talked about, again, a month ago. So I already kind of knew that there was going to be an uptick in demands for fairness. That's what Mars and Libra does. But now I'm going to, and sorry, one more thing, possible economic changes too. So the markets may change quite a bit around like mid-October when Venus opposes Saturn, because Venus in Virgo is about work. Saturn, again, is a malefic, and the eclipse is a reset. But, it's not a guarantee. But I will tell you, if nothing changes in the markets in mid-October, I don't think that there will be massive changes until next spring. Maybe in January when Pluto goes into Aquarius again, maybe when it's at the anaretic 29th degree of Capricorn at the beginning of January. But generally speaking, I do think that if there was to be a big reset in the markets, it probably would happen during eclipse season this month. So anyways, let's talk about each new and full moon. So you can see on the screen here, there is a solar eclipse in Libra, October 14th. And I'm calling this the resetting of energetic contracts. So when you're in a relationship with a company or a friend or a romantic partner, you have an energetic contract. So right now and leading up to this eclipse, people are really evaluating if they want to be in those contracts anymore. And the chart ruler Venus is again in Virgo in its fall, opposite Saturn, which is a malefic. So for a lot of people, it's like either you're getting engaged or you're signing up for a new company, for a new job, or you're kind of firming up that friendship, or you're walking away from one of these things. We also have Mars and Scorpio supporting the transformation potential. We have Mercury opposite Chiron, which is vocalizing our hurts, our suffering, our pain. So the new moon is also in conjunct Uranus, which supports creative or innovative pivots to either wiggle out of a relationship or reinvent it, whether that's through technology or in a professional setting, or if it's through maybe even like for some people opening a relationship or something. But Uranus finds creative ways to make something work. So maybe there's a creative way to even cut a deal. So if we're talking about the Hollywood strikes, we're definitely dealing with technology and thinking about how technology is affecting those outcomes or that agreement. So again, for a lot of people, this is the beginning of a reset. But if you use those Mars South Node transits with Pluto involved as well in the beginning of October, then this eclipse will actually be quite nice for you. It's actually a fresh start. But if you resist and you avoid the confrontations, you avoid addressing the elephants in the room, like I talked about, then the eclipse will be like kind of ripping you out of those contracts, like it or not, but you want to put fate on your side again by dealing with those situations now. So address the tension in early October and the eclipse will actually work out for you. If you avoid the inevitable at the beginning of October, you don't do the hard work, then absolutely this eclipse will be not so fun. So now we're going to jump to the next one. So there's a lunar partial eclipse on October 28th. And pardon me, just a second. So October 28th, we have a partial lunar eclipse, right? It's not super, super tight, not super strong, but it is still an eclipse. So, eclipses at the lunar stage are the lunar eclipse are, really finishing, releasing, bringing things to a culmination, to fruition, and just kind of saying, again, I'm nullifying or I'm voiding maybe this contract. So in this case, I'm seeing almost like a continual tension for some people, but for others, it's almost about finding the beauty in the wreckage. So the full moon is a release of any residual energies that are lingering after either the breaking of that contract or the holding on of that contract. So some of you could be channeling also this energy into creative outlets. Others could be even moving or traveling somewhere to escape a situation. Mars is conjunct Mercury and opposite Jupiter. So there's actually a massive expansion of energy to either travel, explore, or even harness our physical vitality to the fullest, or even to sell or publish something. But I think a lot of people will have physical energy around this time. Chart ruler, again, is Venus, and Venus is opposite Neptune. So that can bring about creativity, but also deception and confusion. So be mindful of lies and relationships. But I think the key question, again, for every sign in October is, are you resetting or nullifying? Or are you renewing that energetic contract? So are you renewing your conviction and your dedication and your, commitment to this business or to this company or to this friend or to this lover? Those are the things that's going to happen here. So if you're a writer in Hollywood, there's probably some changes in the strikes. If you're an auto worker, probably some changes there. If you are, whatever you're doing, I mean, again, it all starts with confronting the inevitable, the unavoidable issues first. And then if you do that in the first 2 weeks of October, the eclipses are really, again, that new beginning that you've been looking for. So now I'm going to go through. So I'm just going to reset here. So now I'm going to go through what this means for each and every zodiac sign. So again, prioritize your rising sign and then track your sun and moon in this forecast. I have timestamps down below. So I'm going to explain what these eclipses mean, because again, it's a big time. You don't want to sleep on these energies. So we're going to go through Aries all the way through Pisces. So let's begin. So I'll share my screen again. Just a second here. And so we're going to set this. We're going to set this to that solar eclipse in Libra, just as a reference point, by the way. But by all means, I'm going to talk about the entire month. So first of all, we're going to go through Aries. So what's going on with Aries? So in October, I think for Aries, this is one of the most powerful months for you of the entire year. Because first of all, you have Mars in your 7th house at the beginning of the month, conjoining the South Node. You're finishing up Venus and Leo. And, this eclipse in your 7th house is truly reforming, reinventing, setting a new tone in all of your significant relationships. Again, I'm talking friends, business partners, and romantic partners. So for Aries, you've had Mars sweeping through your 7th house, kicking up all kinds of dirt, causing chaos, creating tension. And for you, I do think this is you have the most unavoidable sort of issues to deal with in your relationships. Now, for some of you, again, it might not be romantic, but for all of you as Aries, you're realizing that you've been taken advantage of. You realize that there are people who have been draining your energy. It's like you've probably realized that there are people you've been fighting with for years. Maybe you've been in a relationship that's been a love-hate thing with your spouse or your partner for like 5-6 years. And you're finally realizing at this point that, even if you've found the love and the romance at times in that relationship, that if you just take a bird's eye view, it's been really exhausting. So you've been exhausted for sure by your relationships. And it's not that you can't hold on to them. Some of you may be able to do that. But for a lot of you, I think there's a purge happening here. But a lot of those purges may be going on in the first part of October. So for some of you, there's really a bifurcation of outcomes. For some Aries placements, this is the birth as a new moon. This is the birth of a new relationship that actually speaks to your healing journey, because you have there's a Mercury Chiron opposition. So with Chiron in your 1st house, the North Node in your 1st house, you're really coming into your own. And you're saying, is there somebody out there who can support and make me feel like I can embrace my perceived flaws, and accept myself fully? So hopefully there's somebody coming in here who really accepts you for who you are. And it's going to be such a refreshing moment, because I think a lot of you are coming out of a relationship where someone didn't recognize your true identity. or maybe you were afraid to reveal your true self in that past relationship. Now, we do have Venus, the chart ruler, in your 6th house, opposing Saturn. So for some of you, it's actually a job situation. Some of you are pivoting out of a job, and some of you are experiencing setbacks with coworkers. But I think for a lot of you, you're committing to either a new work process or a new health routine, a new exercise regimen, and you're just like cleaning house. You're basically like, I think a lot of you are getting rid of relationships that were really toxic for your lifestyle as well. So you're kind of cleaning house, finding those relationships, and it's bringing you peace of mind in your day-to-day, I think. And some of you are starting a new job around that time. Now, thinking about that lunar eclipse on October 28th, which is going to be in Taurus, again, it's a partial lunar eclipse, so it may not be, quite as dramatic of a reset as this total solar eclipse. But on October 28th, you're going to have Mars, Mercury in your 8th house, opposite the moon in the 2nd house. So that sort of lunar eclipse in the 2nd house, maybe financial, maybe values driven. So for some of you, you may be, sort of releasing yourself of a business contract or changing your income, but others are purging values. And they're realizing, again, maybe there's a new relationship that is in greater alignment with the values. So this is why Aries need to reset that karmic contract. So for Aries, it's like if you reset that karmic contract, then, in the first part of the month, then the second half of the month, you're ready to let go fully of those outdated values that you were holding on to make a prior relationship work. Now, with Mars and Mercury in the 8th house, there may be some financial disputes for you. Some of you may get into a financial dispute with an ex or a partner about possessions or something. But others are just speaking to their transformation journey, giving that energy and an outlet. Others may begin some type of like new entrepreneurial thing or start a job. But, generally speaking, I think this is a time in which you're releasing again bad energy, and that's opening the door hopefully to better even financial outcomes. So I think for Aries, again, the key here is to address these issues head on that are plaguing your relationships. Allow the eclipse to be a good thing by, again, ripping the Band-Aid off early on so you can start that new relationship or that new contract, so that by late October, you're kind of like fully releasing any old perspectives, values, and even like changing your sense of self-worth, which is the 2nd house. So stepping into a new sense of self-worth, that's a little bit higher. Again, just be mindful of any financial discrepancies or issues along the way. But apart from that, I think that you'll be in a good spot. So next we jump to Taurus. What's happening to Taurus in October? So you're gonna have Mars really in your 6th house for much of the month. So Mars in the 6th, in the first part of the month, coming up to that conjunction with the South Node, squaring Pluto in your 9th house. This to me is really a reset of your work process and any contracts and agreements and alliances with coworkers. So for Tauruses, you may come into a new income, but that also may require you to leave behind a previous job or work project. So you may be offloading a work project, coming into something else, a new one that comes with a new income or an agreement there. Mars also square Pluto in the 9th. So maybe you're changing your worldview and you're changing your philosophy somehow, and that's affecting your job. We also have, of course, Venus going into Virgo in your 5th, which could boost your creativity a little bit. But I think for Tauruses, the net of October right away is avoiding burnout at your job, striking strategic alliances with coworkers, because Mars in the 6th can create conflict with coworkers. So making sure you have strategic alliances. Some of you may be walking away from a co-working dynamic. And so anyways, once we get to the eclipse on October 14th, the solar eclipse, that's the birth of a new sort of daily habit, daily routine, and work process. And for some of you, even an approach to your health, a new approach to health. So for Tauruses, maybe you're realizing at this time that there's a more creative way to make money. I mean, Venus in the fifth, right? Venus in the fifth is going to accent your creativity. So maybe it's like, oh, I should start a Substack, or I should, form this professional alliance that somehow allows me to start a business or to make more money elsewhere. So I think for Tauruses, this is actually very much a work focused eclipse. So some of you may have a bit of I don't want to call it a blow up, but like some sort of tension coming to a head, even with like a boss. I mean, I know the sixth house is not really like executives or anything, but it can be sometimes like directors and managers in a lot of ways, even though the 10th house is oftentimes our authority figures. I think the sixth house has a lot to do with like even like direct bosses. So for Tauruses, if you're not getting along with like a colleague, and especially like a director or a VP or something, I think this is the time to maybe request a new team, or again, find a new job. At this point, though, technically, Mars goes into Scorpio and it's in your seventh house. So for Tauruses, there is a sense here of some conflict in your significant relationships as well. But I think if you utilize the solar eclipse the best way, you're committing to a new habit, like I said, that maybe is getting you to a healthier, balanced life. And for some people, that's about changing your hours, or maybe even changing whether you work from home or in an office. So for a lot of Tauruses, I think you're changing your office or your work environment in order to be healthier, in order to be more, sort of mentally balanced. So you could be purging toxic habits. But as we get into mid-October, Mars in the seventh, along the way, you are going to have some turbulence in relationships. But luckily, Mars is trining Saturn at that time. So maybe you're able to to confront a significant friend in a way that actually improves your friendships and your friend circle and your social life. Anyways, with Venus and Virgo, I think it can be an incredibly creative time. Also, for some Tauruses, in October, you may feel like working more independently, which I think, could favor entrepreneurship. But anyways, the full moon in Taurus, the lunar eclipse, October 28th, that could be very emotional for you because Mars and Mercury are going to be in the seventh house. So you're really vocalizing frustrations in a relationship. But with the full moon conjunct Jupiter in the first house, a lot of you are going to want to be free away from, maybe you're traveling, or maybe you're confessing something, or maybe you're purging something. But you are definitely bringing your emotions to the top, to the surface, and maybe being vulnerable in a way that brings you closer to somebody or breaks you away from somebody. Now, the strategic approach to the October there is that you, again, want to avoid burnout in your day-to-day job. If you overcommit and you overextend yourself in your daily work, then your relationships will suffer. But if you can strike a balance there between your work life and your real life, then I actually think relationships will go well. For some Tauruses, you'll feel inspired to move homes or to travel somewhere at the end of October, maybe even to travel somewhere with a partner. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it will be a negative experience for you if you don't balance out your life in the sixth house. So now we're going to go into Gemini. So Geminis, you have in the beginning of October, this sort of tension building in your fifth house, which is about romance, creativity, passion, sports, athletics, things like that. So with Mars in the fifth, for Geminis, there may be conflict here with people like I think it's complicated actually, because for some of you, it's actually quite nice because Mars in the fifth can be very creative. And so some of you are maybe, highly, highly motivated to engage in a creative project with people. Others are actually purging and walking away from a creative group. Some people are rethinking their decision to maybe have kids or have children. Other people are dealing with conflict on maybe a sports team or something like that. But for a lot of Geminis, there may even be some tension with people that you've gone on dates with or something. There may be tension with, maybe you're frustrated about like your dates, they're not panning out, or you feel like frustrated by the fact that it's not reaching the next level or something like that. So I think though that when Mars squares Pluto in your eighth, that could be about financial changes somehow that connect back to your creative projects. Like maybe you're again offloading a creative project or coming into one that comes with like a big financial change for you. Other people are finding a way to do shadow work through their creative projects. Other people are actually launching new creative projects. Like maybe they're starting a TikTok, maybe they're starting an Instagram or a YouTube channel. Like some Geminis, I think, could be sort of voicing their frustrations through these creative outlets. But again, the solar eclipse is a fresh start, ideally. So for some Geminis, this is the birth of that new creative hobby, of that creative project. It's a reset in your creative endeavors. Maybe it's, again, a new perspective on how you want to either eventually have kids or start a family or something like that. The chart ruler, though, is Venus, remember, and Venus is in Virgo in your fourth house. So for many Geminis, this could really impact somehow this solar eclipse, this reset of relationships could affect your financial situation at home, within your family. You may feel as though there is a need to commit to a new property, a new home, or you may feel very alienated from your family at this time. You may feel as though your creative ambitions are creating distance from someone in your family. Other people feel like, again, maybe just committing to a property or something. But with Saturn in your 10th, your career is being scrutinized here. So for some of you, you may feel even like a clash between what you want to commit to in your career, but thinking about the cascading impacts in your home or family. So maybe some of you want to move for a job, or maybe some of you want to start a new job, but it's creating a serious impact, again, in your home or with your family. So I think for Geminis, it's kind of a complicated time where you want to balance these things out. Now we have the lunar eclipse on October 28th in your 12th house. So at the end of October, you have Mars and Mercury in Scorpio in your 6th house. You have the full moon in your 12th house. That to me is a little bit daunting. So I think for Geminis, the end of the month, you have to watch out for your daily sort of health practices. You have to stay on top of those things, because the full moon in the 12th could be very overwhelming, especially when it comes to like managing your sleep cycles, managing your mental health. And with Mars and Mercury in the 6th, there could be disruptions there to your daily habits, your daily process that makes you feel as though you're drained, you're exhausted, and you feel as though you need to go into a place of isolation for a bit. So for Geminis, at the end of October, you need to give yourself alone time, because you're going to start to feel frustrations at work at the end of October or within your daily health routines. That's not to say that Geminis would necessarily have health issues, but I think that there could be frustrations just in that 6th house of daily, daily responsibilities and daily health and things. So with the full moon in the 12th, for some of you, it could actually be very creative and visionary, and like you're getting this almost like spiritual insight, and you're maybe connecting with your spirit guides. But for others, it is a need for maybe going into nature, or maybe traveling into a place where you can be alone with nature. I mean, so I think that Geminis are looking for an escape at the end of October. But it all starts with that 5th house, which is, again, how are you investing in your creativity and your creative hobbies? And I know that for some Geminis, you may not feel that creative or whatnot. You may not feel like this even is relevant to you, but like, again, for some of you, it's about whether or not to have children, or it's whether or not to start a family, or again, maybe it's athletics. But I think for all Geminis, like really think through, like, what am I putting energy into in the creative realm? And also, though, how am I balancing that with my responsibilities at work? And how does that, again, either off, like kind of create turbulence in, or stabilize my sense of home and family? So I think just Venus being in the fourth house, a big time to maybe creatively invest in your home, interior design, or that could be the fifth house, Mars and Libra. So for a lot of Geminis, you're maybe beautifying your home, but you have to think about your home as a place of, um, a solace, a place of solitude, and a place of where you can kind of heal yourself, and feel balanced. But with Saturn opposite, you may not feel that way. So for Geminis, even think about the financing picture with regards to your home and your family. So for some Geminis, maybe you're dealing with like issues related to like property, maybe because of all these ambitions you have creatively. So I think Geminis, you have a pretty complicated October. And I think with our Chiron in the 11th, some of you may be purging friendships even still, and feeling like you have to walk away from some friendships because of some conflict there, either in other parts of your life. So anyways, let's go to Cancers. So Cancers, you have the solar eclipse. Well, before you get into the solar eclipse, you have Mars in your fourth house. So this is kicking up some tension at home or with your family or anyone you live with. So for Cancers, you probably haven't had the easiest time when it comes to, sort of, again, domestic situations and domestic matters. So with Mars also squaring Pluto in your seventh house, you may be resetting your relationships a little bit, or financial agreements with people and partners, or agreements to live somewhere, move somewhere with someone, or to not move somewhere with someone. So I think for Cancers, there's a lot of tension in the home that you need to address. If you're living with someone, there's almost a guarantee that you're not getting along with them right now. So you have to figure out, why are we on top of each other? Are we living in too cramped of a space? Are we, is there some other reason? And for some Cancers, you're also feeling conflict with your family. So you're not on good terms, maybe with your family, or maybe there's like just a sort of a tough situation in your family right now. So maybe there's a family member who's going through some type of, health crisis, for example. That can even happen. But for Cancers, again, address the tension in your home, in your family. And in mid-October, during the solar eclipse in Libra, you may be sort of resetting your relationship with your family, maybe cutting off a relationship with a family member, maybe no longer speaking to your family, but maybe speaking to your family again, maybe reconnecting with them. Others of you could be moving. Eclipses are not really great times for like setting intentions, by the way, but it's perfectly fine to take inspired action during eclipses. So if you feel compelled to think about your home differently or where you want to live, that's fine. So, anyways, some Cancers may be moving during the eclipse. Some Cancers, again, are just kind of just completely changing their relationship to their family. Now, the chart ruler, Venus, is in the third, opposite Saturn, the ninth. So you may realize that you are not aligned on your values in some ways, or your morals, or your moral code, or your ethics, or your worldview. So you may realize that you don't have the same worldview as your partner or someone in your family. And so you may be having a very serious conversation about that in middle of October. And some of you may even break off an agreement to go traveling with someone, whether it's a family member or a partner or a friend. You may decide to divest from that. So maybe you're just like going on a trip, you're Airbnb-ing with like somebody that and you decide you sort of change your mind there. Other people are maybe just like having a tough conversation with a partner, but agreeing to commit further, agreeing to continue the commitment. So it's not inherently negative. So again, really own up to what's going on in your home or with your family right now, and use this eclipse to reset that relationship or those relationships. And in terms of your evaluation criteria, Think about the worldview, the philosophy, and the long-term vision. If the long-term vision is off, then maybe you do want to move to a different home and away from somebody. Maybe you do want to stop, really discussing something with your family. So it's a really big time actually for Cancers. Now, the lunar eclipse is actually in your 11th house. So the lunar eclipse, October 28th, could actually be very creative. Could be very creative. It could involve, for some of you, though, releasing a friendship or breaking away from a community. But for others of you, you're actually stepping into a new community, or you're motivated to create and collaborate with a community creatively. So I think that can be really nice. Some of you may be traveling with a group or community. Some of you may be launching or changing something about like a retreat that you want to do. Some of you could be doing something kind of big on social media, or in politics in the 11th house. But some of you may be changing your social media strategy entirely in the end of October. So for Cancers, I think the bigger news, again, is that early part of the month, that first half of the month. You need to rectify an issue within your home or family. And again, think about it through the lens of are we on the same page with our long-term goals, et cetera. So now we're going to go into Leo. So Leos, you have Mars in the 3rd right now. In the beginning of the month, you have the solar eclipse eventually happening in your 3rd house. So for Leos, Mars in the 3rd has brought up a lot of arguments, debates, disagreements, but also an energy that you're putting into like analysis. Maybe a lot of you are sifting through data. Maybe some of you are reading or putting a lot of energy into writing. And by the way, for Cancers, for some of you, October could be big for like publishing or something, or maybe even like monetizing something you're analyzing data-wise. But anyways, going back to Leos, Mars in the 3rd is creating very conflict-prone dialogue in a lot of ways. But you do have to address, again, for Leos, I think you have the power to address these lingering issues in relationships and to realize and vocalize that, hey, you are draining my energy, or I don't appreciate that. So the solar eclipse in Libra on October 14th is happening in your 3rd house. And that 3rd house is about, sort of our mental faculties, reading, writing, talking, discussing, publishing, selling, teaching, neighbors, siblings. So for some Leos, maybe you're resetting your relationship to a sibling or to a neighbor. Others are maybe traveling somewhere locally with people. Other Leos are, again, resetting a writing contract or a publishing contract. Some Leos are simply demanding more out of their relationships and talking about it, because the 3rd house can just be talking in a lot of ways. So I think for Leos, you're having a very pivotal conversation that alters the trajectory of your relationships. Now, the chart ruler Venus is in Virgo, right? In your 2nd house of money. So for a lot of Leos, there's a financial component to this. So for Cancers, it was about evaluating, do we have the same philosophy? For Leos, you're evaluating if you have the same financial goals. So for some of you, you're signing a new contract with a new company. But for others, you're either continuing or breaking the relationship up because of your financial alignment or misalignment. So for Leos, focus on the finances. Focus on how the finances are either sort of smoothing out or causing turbulence in your relationships. And again, address those issues head on. Now we go into the lunar eclipse in Taurus, October 28th. And that's going to be in your 10th house. So that could be a really big deal, because the 10th house deals with your public persona, your career, your even authority figures. So for Leos, I think the end of October might be even bigger in a lot of ways. So for Leos, I think there's just a lot of career changes going on. So for Leos, you may switch jobs. You may change the responsibilities you have at work. You may communicate something very publicly. You may publish something because it's close to Jupiter. You will have Mars and Mercury in your 4th house. So I think there will be some tension at home in the end of October. So you want to avoid or anticipate, really, some amount of disagreement or discord within your family, your home, with anyone you live with. But with the full moon in the 10th, I think that for some of you, you could manifest an opportunity in your career, like a new opportunity. Maybe you're going viral even. I don't know. Sometimes when the full moon is close to Jupiter there, maybe you're just like conveying a message and you're reaching a lot of people. So for Leos, like at the end of the month, you may be kind of like in a bigger conversation in the public eye, like I think for Leos also, you could be like thinking about your income differently or your financial goals again differently. Some of you, I know it's a full moon, which is endings for some people, but for some people, the full moon is powerful, right? It's a powerful release, but it's like the full moon embodies what we want. So maybe you're embodying financial success in your job. Maybe you're embodying, again, reaching a larger audience. Maybe you're embodying selling something big. You're playing a bigger role in society. So I don't think that Leo should be worried about that. But I do think it starts with, in the beginning of the month, having those tough conversations, investing in writing if you're interested in that, maybe scripting. I think for Leos, it's actually kind of a creative time in the sense that maybe you're writing something throughout October that you just get out there at the end of October. So I think Leo should not shy away from the spotlight, which I know comes without saying, really. But, if you're a Leo, embrace the spotlight at the end of October. For some Leos, though, it's like, I'm not going to lie. Some of you may be at your breaking point, though, with your career. So for the full moon, sometimes it's exhaustion. So for some Leos, maybe you want to sell your business. Maybe you want to give up on something you've been working towards for years, and you want to sell again, just sell the business to somebody else. So because the 10th house is responsibilities. So maybe you want to offload like responsibilities and say, hey, I want to focus on my family in the 4th house, or I'm too focused on my career and it's eroding my family sort of trust and cooperation. So really balance that out. And I think that, but again, it all starts with like, what are my financial goals? Like, I can't emphasize that enough. The step one is, okay, am I aligned financially with my family, my spouse, my friends, my partner, whoever it is? And if you're not, then the tension will bubble. And then by the end of the month, you're just like burned out in your job. So really make sure you address the financials. Now we have Virgo. So Virgo, you have Mars in Libra for the first part of October. And, Mars and Libra will be in your 2nd house, and you have a lot of energy in your 2nd house right now. So for Virgos, you're probably frustrated with the income that you're making, the money you're making right now. It's not enough. But because Venus is going into Virgo, I like the first part of October for you, because if you're willing, this is the time to demand a raise. This is the time to demand a higher salary, whether that's by taking a competing offer, bringing it to your firm and say, guess what? I'm going to leave unless you pay me more, or finding a new job or asking for that raise. I think it's possible here because Venus in the 1st house is positive for attracting financial success. So for a lot of Virgos, you're resetting your income, but you kind of have to ask for it. I don't think it just comes to you. So for a lot of Virgos, you're agreeing to a new salary around the solar eclipse, October 14th. Some of you are letting go of old values, or you're changing your sense of self-worth, but I think you should be increasing, right? Increasing your sense of self-worth in order to manifest more money. Like, that's really what this is. With Venus in the 1st, though, opposite Saturn in the 7th, there is another theme, which is, the viability of my relationships. So it's not just financial. I mean, some of you could go into business with somebody like a financial partner and you're starting a business here. But a lot of you are realizing with the utmost clarity here how your partners or your friends or your colleagues do or don't improve your sense of self-worth. So if you feel as though somebody is, again, sort of, making you feel low, or the lower self-esteem, you're feeling like you have no self-esteem around somebody, or someone invalidates your confidence, like you're ending that relationship here. You're getting rid of it. So for Virgos, I know you've had tough transits the last few years, and Saturn in the 7th is not easy. But Saturn is preparing to station direct November 4th. And so a lot of you are feeling like it's like kind of reaching this impasse where it's like, again, am I with this person long term or not? So some Virgos may get engaged actually around this time. Some of you are getting engaged to a new business, but some of you may be tying the knot, but others are breaking up. I think that, Virgos are kind of front and center along with Aries and Libra for this eclipse. Now the full moon, the lunar eclipse, October 28th, is in your 9th house. So for some Virgos, you're finishing a big trip that you overseas trip, or you're realizing you want to move or travel somewhere. You're finishing something in the higher educational space. You're realizing you do or don't want to get a degree in something new. And others are changing their worldview or their philosophy. I mean, I don't know if the full moon is as big of a deal in a lot of ways. Some of you could even be publishing something or finishing a degree. Like, I mean, that could be big news, but I really think Virgos are front and center, more so in the first half of October. So the second half of October, you're still going to have Venus in your first house. So I don't want to like completely downplay it, but that Venus-Saturn opposition is massive. And I think that October, it dawns on you whether or not you want to go into business with somebody, whether or not you want to stay at this job, even if they're not paying you enough, whether or not you want to get married to somebody. And again, end of October will still be tense because Saturn is going to start stationing slowly towards the end of October, and then November 4th, it goes direct. So it almost feels like this is the bubbling up of that tension of like, do I stay with this person or not? Commit to this person or not? Now, Mars and Mercury are in your 3rd house by the full moon. So there could be some arguments there. Arguments about where to live. Or for some of you, again, publishing could be a factor. Or you're analyzing something, or you're writing something. So yeah, I think for Virgos, you're writing or something like that at the end of October. But I think the beginning of October is much more monumental. So let's talk about Libras now. So, I've been talking about the sign of Libra a lot here. So naturally, let me go backwards, by the way, just to kind of show you more precise the eclipse point in October. But for Libras, October is your reset. You've got Mars in Libra for the first part of the month, squaring Pluto in your 4th house. So you're getting into all kinds of disputes, but you're demanding independence. You're setting boundaries. You're asserting yourself. You're comfortable going independent, going solo, even if that means breaking up a really semi kind of good relationship. Like if a relationship isn't really good, then it's not good enough for you right now. You're demanding more. So continue to put yourself first. Continue to champion your needs. Continue to stand up for yourself. Even if that means that you lose a relationship. So for Libras, people are finding you to be a little bit, people are finding you unfamiliar right now because with the South Node and the first, your typical coping mechanisms and blueprint, and just like your orientation to reality. So how you move through the world is literally changing. So, for Libras, you are going through a reinvention by releasing baggage. And for you especially, it's about finding the energy vampires. Who is draining me of my energy? How am I sort of playing a passive role in my relationships? How is the existence of some of my relationships keeping me down and preventing me from expressing myself fully? So authenticity is the only way forward for Libras right now. And any codependent relationships are falling away. If you're ever avoiding confrontation, and if that avoidance style is allowing bad relationships to continue, this is when those relationships finally break. Like I can almost hear it. I can almost feel it breaking, because I'm stepping into these vibrations, right? As I look at this chart. And so Libras, you have to address the tension. You have to address the conflict in the beginning of October so that this eclipse, October 14th, is the new beginning, the new version of yourself coming to light. the announcement that you're making about a new direction you're going in or something like that. And it will be karmic ultimately. So if someone suddenly leaves your life, there's a reason for that. The South Node is trying to drain away, clean house, drain away the things that you don't need anymore and the people you don't need. Now, the chart ruler Venus is in the 12th, opposite Saturn in the 6th. That's kind of complicated, I'm not going to lie. Venus in the 12th can be past life relationships. It can be a relationship to spirituality. It can be valuing mental health more. It can be valuing solitude. It can be creative through our dreams. It can be about, again, balancing out our mental health and well-being. So for some Libras, maybe you're resetting your nightlife habits, or you're resetting your spiritual values or your connection to the cosmos, or maybe you're finally dealing with mental health issues and seeing how your physical health has impacted your mental health. So for some Libras, you could be thinking about not only my relationships, how are they draining me, but how are my daily habits draining me, right? Now we have the lunar eclipse, October 28th, in your 8th house, with Mars and Mercury opposite that in the 2nd house. So the lunar eclipse, I think that that's financial for a lot of you. So there could be financial changes. So, because again, for some Libras, it's not the relationship that's changing. It's your job that's changing. So for some Libras, you're starting a new job in mid-October. Because again, you're not just resetting contracts with a friend or a lover. You're resetting contracts with a business. So for some Libras, you're starting a new job. That comes with a different income or a different salary, or you're investing differently. So for some Libras, it could be as simple as you're changing jobs in the beginning of the month. And then in the end of the month, you're realizing, I got to put my 401k here, or my savings here, or I have to change my healthcare benefits or something. Like, that could all happen. But for others, it could be something more so related to shadow work. In the 8th house, your subconscious will fully reach the foreground in a lot of ways. So I think that could be a really interesting sort of awakening of, my subconscious and my shadows. What have I been hiding from myself? So maybe like some of you are breaking away from a relationship and going inward and doing some of that shadow work right now. So I don't think that it might not be the easiest full moon, actually. So for a lot of you, again, it's like the unavoidable sudden, like it's just the unavoidable coming up. But for others, you're making big changes financially. And even maybe some of you are getting into a financial dispute with a partner. Others are deciding to invest in a trip or break away from investing in a trip. So that's all happening there. But again, I think I've already hit the points for Libras. You need to confront, you avoid codependency, confront the issues that you've been avoiding for maybe years. Find that, like, allow yourself to set that new tone in that relationship, that friendship, or that job. And at the end of the month, do whatever shadow work is necessary. Or if you found a new job, tend to your finances. So, and by the way, for some Libras, this may be an inheritance, actually, because Mars is squaring Pluto in your 4th. I don't want to fear monger, but for some Libra, especially Libra risings, you may be dealing with a financial discussion within your family. Others are divorcing and dealing with the financial fallout of that divorce. So I'm not going to lie, like Libras, you have a pretty dense month to get through, but I believe in you. So talk about Scorpios now. Scorpios, you're gonna have Mars and all these Libra placements in your 12th house for the first part of the month, squaring Pluto in your 3rd. I mean, look, Mars in the 12th, not great for sleep and circadian rhythms. Mars, in the 12th is giving you really weird dreams. A lot of Scorpios have had weird, vivid, even like aggressive dreams recently. And it's probably very off-putting. But, in the 12th house, this is also past lives. This is spirituality. So with the South Node in the 12th, I actually think with Libra, what that means for a lot of Scorpios is a lot of past life connections are coming in constantly. The whole time the South Node's in Libra for a year and a half. Everyone you meet, I think, is a past life connection right now. I swear to God. Anyways, with the solar eclipse in the 12th, this could be a very new spiritual connection, or a connection to a spirit guide. Like maybe a spirit guide comes in. This could also be the breaking of a spiritual contract with somebody. Maybe you have a psychic link to somebody that's telepathic, or again, it's just energetic, and you're breaking that off. Other people are starting a new relationship with someone from a past life. Some of you are realizing that you have to fix some of your approaches to your, like you have to nurture your mental health, maybe for some of you. But for a lot of you, I think it's spiritual, and it's like very meditative. So some of you are having profound meditation experiences around that time, but also with Venus and Virgo in your 11th, opposite Saturn in the 5th, you could be making commitments to new friends. You could be like really establishing like long-term bonds with a friend who has a past life connection with you, with that Libra energy in the 12th. But again, for Scorpios, a lot of this is going to be health related because the 12th and 6th house are active, with Mercury opposite Chiron, and Chiron's in the 6th. So for some Scorpios, you're really investing in a healing journey, like rehabilitating yourself. Now, again, though, with Virgo in the 11th, with Venus in the 11th, I like that for becoming more social, establishing firmer friendships, maybe building a new community, maybe realizing you want to start your own collective or co-op or something. Venus and Virgo could be making more money on social media, or monetizing something on social media, starting a new political group, or joining a political organization, joining a humanitarian group, going to a conference, setting up a conference. But opposite Saturn the 5th, there's probably a creative component to these collaborations. Now, the lunar eclipse will be big for you because it's in your 7th house. So for Scorpios, the lunar eclipse on October 28th is probably the ending of a certain perspective on a relationship, or possibly the end of a relationship. With Mars and Mercury in your 1st at that time, you're getting real heated and fired up. You're really heated, and you're kind of maybe a little agitated. So you're demanding independence at the end of the month. And maybe that does coincide with a breakup. But for some of you, it might just be an emotional moment in a relationship, or the establishment of a business partnership. But because it's a lunar eclipse, a lot of you are probably fed up with like a business partner, and you're basically threatening to walk away from that person. And then maybe some of you are agreeing to travel with a partner or somebody, but because it's in Taurus, I think there's a financial component there. I think a lot of you are agreeing to go into business with somebody, or again, to divest from that relationship. And some of you are having financial disputes with a partner, and maybe you're even realizing that you don't have the same financial goals as a partner. So that could even change. So now let's talk about, Now let's talk about Sagittarius. So what's going on with Sag? Well, the first part of October, you have Mars in the 11th, and that will bring up a lot of tension in your friendships and your friend groups. But also, you're feeling motivated maybe to find new friends or new communities. Squaring Pluto in your 2nd house, there may be some financial hiccups or tension with friends or with communities. Maybe you feel like there's a friend who owes you money. Maybe you're expecting a payout from like a brand or a social media company, or you're expecting like maybe even like a payout from an organization, and it's like not happening yet. So you're trying to figure that out maybe. But if you address issues in friend groups and communities, then this lunar eclipse on October 14th is a new beginning and a resetting of the contracts with friends, with communities, or with a social media company or a platform or a brand that you're working with on social media. So your social media life could change drastically if you're a Sag. But also your friend circle could change drastically. Now, the ruling planet is Venus, and Venus is in Virgo, opposite Saturn. Now, that is really impactful for job and home. So with Venus in the 10th, I think a good thing will happen probably in your job. So maybe you're starting a new job, maybe you're building a new professional relationship, maybe you're smoothing out a relationship with your family member, with a family member or a parent. But I think opposite Saturn, I think a lot of you are committing to property, a home, and a job, or like somehow all these things are starting to solidify. Maybe that requires you to walk away from a community, or, you know, you're moving, you're finding new friends, but, you know, I like Venus in the 10th. So I think for Sages, you know, you really want to chase that new job, chase that new contract, focus on your professional relationships. Now, some of you could just be, yeah, monetizing things you're doing in the public eye. Some of you may get into the beauty industry or the fashion industry. Some of you may be perceived as very beautiful to the public. So maybe if you want to do like a photo shoot or something, that could be great. Now, opposite Saturn, though, there may be some conflicts in the home, but I think that this is really about, do I want to live maybe with this person long term? So maybe some of you are settling into a home yet again with a partner. Others, though, are frustrated and walking away from a friend or a creative community. So anyways, now we have at the end of October, the lunar eclipse in the 6th house. The lunar eclipse in the 6th is, to me, also related to jobs. So that's going to be about your work process and how you make money in your day-to-day. So for some of you, you're deciding to work from home. Maybe you're moving for a job. Maybe you're deciding to work in an office again. Maybe some of you are working multiple jobs. Maybe some of you are, well, the 6th house is also daily health routines. So maybe you're changing your approach to health. You have a new perspective on your health. You're getting new, like literally new info on your health, like what's going on here. Now, Mars and Mercury in the 12th, that could kind of upset the balance with like your sleep or your mental health. So you really want to tend to actually like focus on the health actually at the end of the month. And really try to find a job though that supports your mental well-being. Now you will have very vivid dreams at the end of the month. So maybe channel that into your creativity. You know, and I think that, but I think that ultimately in the 6th, some of you may realize you don't want to be a digital nomad anymore. I think a lot of you are doing that right now as a Sag. Some of you may realize you want to be a digital nomad. So some of you may just be traveling for work. Others are giving up on maybe learning about a certain technology and how to apply that to their job, or the reverse. Maybe you're learning about a new technology and applying that to your job. So I think for Virgos, though, the dominant theme of October is building new relationships at work, building new friendships, and being financially rewarded, hopefully, in your job in a way that wasn't happening before. So now we're talking about Capricorn. So Capricorn, you have Mars in the beginning of the month in your 10th house, squaring Pluto in your 1st. Now, Mars conjunct the South Node in the 10th. You are risking a lot of burnout in your career. A lot of Capricorns are fed up with their job. They don't want to be there anymore. They're sick of maybe bending over backwards to appease an authority figure or a parent. Like Capricorns are really just done with like any relationship to authority. So some Capricorns are breaking up with their job. They're no longer talking to a parent. Some Capricorns are, you know, yeah, I think you're going through some tension with all kinds of authority figures. But that sets the tone for a good lunar eclipse, I think. So if you address those issues now, by the time of the lunar eclipse, October 14th, you could start a new job. You could, you know, invest in even like in a job that's more Libran, which could be like artistic or aesthetic, photography related, musical, something related to something, you know, something artistic, painting. So yeah, you're resetting your contracts with companies, most likely, but also maybe they're with your parents. Now the chart ruler though, Venus, is in your 9th house, opposite Saturn. So the key question here is, where do you want to live in a lot of ways? Or how do you want the latitude to travel? Or do you want to be fixed into your home, working from home? For some of you, you may be investing in a trip along the way here, or a new educational path. I think that's what it is for Caps. It's about, do I invest in my education again? Am I so sick of my job that I go back to school? Or do I divest from the educational path and I go into a new job? So the crossroads for Capricorns right now is like, are there things that I have to learn that will help me in my job? And or do I break away from my job permanently and just go back to school? Now, some Capricorns are frustrated right now because they're trying to become entrepreneurs with Mars in the 10th. But with the South Node, it's not making it easy. So for some Capricorns, it's kind of like, do I even want to make this entrepreneurship path work for me? And so for some Capricorns, the solar eclipse is the beginning of a new job, which is like your own company. So some of you are starting a company, but others are giving up on that and going back to school. So for Capricorns, you have to decide. Do I go back to school? Do I stay in my job? Or maybe Venus in the 9th is publishing. Maybe you're getting a publishing contract. Maybe you want to write about the chaos that is your life right now. I don't envy Capricorns at the moment. I do think you're having a tough go in your career. So the focus for Capricorns, for the most part, and I don't want to see Capricorns in the comments complaining to me that I never talk about love for them. It's like not the focus right now, to be honest. Like if you're a Capricorn, like I'm honestly like sometimes I think people ask me the wrong questions a lot of times. And if you're a Capricorn, you're asking me, when do I find love? You're asking me the wrong question. You're absolutely asking me the wrong question. You have to focus on, what do you want to do for the next 5 to 10 years? You got to be thinking long term. Figure out the job. Figure out like who you want to be in the world and worry about relationships later. Because until you figure that part out and you're satisfied with like what you're doing and how you're perceived by society and all these things, and maybe even patching up a relationship with a parent in a dynamic with your family, I don't think you should be focused on love right now. And I know that there's going to be Capricorns, right, complaining to me that, oh, well, you're just stereotyping Capricorns because like you're always making it about work. It's like, I'm not. It's like, do you see the chart? Do you see where all the Libra stuff is? It's in your 10th house. So, it's like, it's not that there's no love ever coming, but I just think that this eclipse is so much more about your contracts with like a company, or again, like literally, what do you want to do? But like, hear me out. If you're like really desperate for love and you really want to find love right now, like, maybe the full moon, October 28th, is in your 5th house. That's romance. Fair enough. Maybe you're having an emotional romantic moment at the end of October. So it's not impossible. But I think for a lot of Capricorns, it's a little bit more creative, the 5th house. It's more about, do I want to embark on a new creative hobby? Do I want to offload a creative hobby and focus on something else? And with Mars and Mercury in your 11th house, you'll be getting into arguments with friends, maybe, but some of you will be starting new friendships or putting a lot of energy into like writing a Substack or creating content for social media. And so I apologize for being harsh on Capricorns, but I just see a lot of Capricorns especially ask me the wrong questions lately. And I know Capricorns who are obsessed with finding a partner. I just don't think that that's completely the focus. I'm not saying that you can't find anybody. Like, I don't want to be a naysayer, but I'm just being objective here. And I'm saying prioritize the career, prioritize the education, prioritize the business, prioritize the family stuff. And the relationship will actually be easier to find if you figure those things out first. So I'm trying to help you ultimately. But again, I think that work is the focus. So anyways, let's go to Aquarius. Aquarius is, the lunar eclipse, or the solar eclipse, sorry, may or may not be the biggest deal, honestly. I mean, look, I don't want to downplay it, but like, you do have all this stuff in the 9th house. The 9th house sometimes kind of goes under the radar for people because the 9th house is so much about our philosophy, our worldview, our education, our publishing, our, travels. So for Aquarius, it's like maybe you're giving up on an educational program. Maybe you're starting a new educational program. Maybe you're traveling somewhere new. Maybe you're developing a new worldview. And for some Aquariuses, that is a big deal because maybe you're in school right now. Maybe you're trying to publish something. Now, the way this would also be a big deal, though, is if you do not have the same philosophy as a partner or a friend or a company. This may be the time when you're breaking up and fracturing, splintering a relationship because of your divergence in philosophy and worldview. Now, for other Aquariuses, the chart ruler Venus is in your 8th, opposite Saturn. So for some Aquariuses, you're breaking up with somebody because you have a financial disagreement or you don't have the same life goals financially. But I think for a lot of Aquariuses, this is about investing or divesting in education. Some of you are realizing it's not worth going into debt. So you decide not to go back to school. Some of you are realizing it is worth it. But you're making a commitment here to a certain learning journey vis-a-vis evaluating the financial situation. So, but deal with that now. You know, address these questions. Do I want to publish something? Do I want to educate myself? Do I have the same worldview as somebody else? And that will make this eclipse that new beginning in these areas. Venus in the 8th can be about merging with somebody financially, so merging bank accounts, or you know, it can even be about doing you know, sort of merging with someone psychically or subconsciously or emotionally. It's like all those things that happen behind closed doors in a relationship. But I think that for some of you, you could be investing in something with a partner, investing in a home, investing in a mortgage, investing in a business. So maybe some of you are firming up a friendship that way or a relationship that way. Others are committing to, again, a long distance trip or deciding to break away and sort of no longer take that trip, you know, so to nullify a trip, like maybe you're canceling plane tickets. But otherwise, some Aquariuses are not going to notice this eclipse all that much. I'm just being honest. This is why people watch my content, because I'm objective. I'm not going to hype up every eclipse for every sign. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't have to be dire all the time. Now, I will go ahead and hype up the lunar eclipse for you because Mars and Mercury are in your 10th house at that point, and the full moon is in your 4th house. So Aquarius is, yes, at the end of October, you could be starting a new job. You could be arguing with a parent. You could be putting a lot of energy into your job. You could be moving homes. You could realize that you don't want to live with somebody anymore. So fair enough. Like maybe some of you are going to a new college and you're going somewhere else across the country, and you're realizing you don't want to do long distance. Maybe some of you are traveling a lot for work and you're realizing you'd rather live somewhere else to make that easier for you. So I don't want to downplay this, right? Like I don't want to downplay these transits, but I don't know necessarily if early October is the biggest deal. I mean, you know, Venus is in Leo right now, technically, as I'm filming this, and maybe some of you are having like forward momentum in your relationships, but I would say as long as you are on the same page financially as somebody, I think your relationship stays alive. I think you're fine. I think the bigger question is too, though, like, again, where do you want to be? Where do you want to live? And how do you want to educate yourself? And where do you want to travel? And do you even want to travel there, so to speak? So now we're going to talk about Pisces. Pisces, this is a bigger deal for you. So for Pisces, you have the lunar eclipse energy, or sorry, the solar eclipse energy in your 8th house. The 8th house is about money, finances, assets, joint resources, and shadow work. So with Mars in the 8th right now, yeah, it's a tense time for you. You're feeling on edge. You're feeling, you know, maybe like you want to start a business, but you're also anxious about it. Now, squaring Pluto, the 11th, some of you want to go into business with a friend or someone on social media. But you may be slightly frustrated with that person's response, and you may feel as though it's not happening the way you expect. So for some of you, you need to confront that. Like, how do you want to go into business, maybe with a friend, again, or a social media person? Or, you know, what are your financial goals? But I think also, if we just zero in on the Venus energy, because Venus rules that solar eclipse, Venus is in Virgo in your 7th house, opposite Saturn in your 1st. So for a lot of you, similar to Virgos, a lot of you are making commitments to somebody, actually. And with the solar eclipse in Libra, your 8th, if you make that commitment, there are massive financial implications. So some of you are agreeing to move in with somebody or get married to somebody, and you're addressing retirement and savings and any other assets, or you're merging with them in a new way. So some of you, though, are getting divorced. Some of you are starting a relationship that's long-term. But for Pisces, like, this is monumental, I think. This is when the relationship either ends or begins. And that relationship could be with a friend, a business partner, or a romantic partner. So for some of you, you're going into business with somebody, and that drastically changes your finances. So for Pisces, like, this is this really is almost as big for you as it would be for like a Libra or an Aries, because this is almost the genesis and the financial underpinnings of a relationship. Now, the lunar eclipse on October 28th is in your third house. And the lunar eclipse, again, can be a culmination, something coming to a head, to fruition, or ending. Now, you're going to have Mars and Mercury in your ninth house by that time. And the lunar eclipse will be in your third, like I said. So for a lot of you, the end of October is a major achievement or ending related to publishing, writing, education, and traveling. And for some of you, you're just having a really emotional conversation. But I think for a lot of Pisces, you've been trying to write something. You've been trying to embark on a new communications endeavor. You've been investing in a new platform. Should I start a podcast? Should I publish a book? Should I get a deal? For a lot of Pisces, you're really starting that. I think you're starting it. But for some of you, you're completing it. You're finishing the book. You're finishing the podcast. But again, maybe you're starting it. So I think for Pisces, you're seeking a business partner in the first part of the month and evaluating the financial consequences of said partnership. And with that partnership, you're launching a new communications project, or you're ending one, or whatever, you're changing it. Some of you could just be taking a trip, though, and traveling locally or something like that. So again, though, can't emphasize this enough for Pisces. Evaluate all your relationships, because here there is a finality to it. Be honest about the state of your relationships, because this is like the Saturn-Venus opposition. This is a commitment to either ending or beginning a relationship. So thank you so much. Just to summarize October, this is a month in which, again, you have to address conflict. You have to deal with the issues that were previously maybe you were avoiding. And you have to use that. You have to be courageous in this area in order to finally deal with the problems and either divest or invest in that relationship, whether it's platonic, professional, or romantic, so that you can set the stage for a new beginning in these areas of relationships on October 14th. Then October 28th, during the lunar eclipse, there's probably a financial uncoupling or a financial change, or you're just continuing to release energetic contracts, because we all have energetic contracts that are unfair, that are imbalanced, that don't respect our true worth. So this is the time to truly evaluate, are all of your relationships, or any of my relationships, disrespecting me, creating an asymmetry in fairness? And if so, how do I either renew and reset that contract or nullify that contract? Now, if you want a reading from me, I'm sold out this year. But if you want to see me, you can see me in February 2024. I have spots at that time. I'm also doing another retreat next year. And if you want to get wind of that, sign up for my email list. I also have an email newsletter, by the way, with astrology updates. So subscribe to that Substack channel. And I'm teaching astrology courses in October, intro, intermediate, and advanced. So you want to learn astrology from me, in which, as you can see, I'm very concise and very thorough. Take my astrology classes. I can meet you wherever you are at whatever level you're at. So intro, intermediate, advanced. So again, thank you so much. I am Evan Nathaniel Grimm, and take care, and best of luck to you in October.